not even, you have to be beyond patient. You have to be like, I don't care. Because if you were like banking your life on like a Hollywood project, like you'll be really super disappointed because even when something happens, it still takes 4 months. Like we got like a yes with the Umbrella Academy as a show, and I don't think it was like official until like I was sitting in the chair at the studio. Like it still took a while, you know. But Umbrella Academy originally got optioned right after it won the Eisner, because Dark Horse had a deal with Universal. It was like its first look deal.
When was that?
That was if Hotel Oblivion was announced 9 years ago, then we're talking maybe 12 years ago. You know, so and Universal Pictures, it was in like their, you know, it was in Hollywood jail for like 10 years. They couldn't figure out how to make Umbrella Academy as a film because once you start throwing a lot of money at something, that's when things have to really start to change about the world. You know, they needed to appeal to like a lot of people. So they kind of, you know, I like to say they take the teeth out of it and they make it into something that, I mean, they were just, at that point, the idea was they were just going to make like X-Men, you know, which we've seen before, and I kept asking them not to do that. And, you know, and luckily, in my opinion, that didn't get made. Because it was still too weird, I think, for the higher-ups to make it. And then, you know, we had this big boom with television, and Dark Horse had to meet the people at UCP, which is Universal Cable Productions, which is kind of a separate entity from Universal Pictures. And they were really cool, and they wanted to make it, they loved everything about the comic, and they wanted to see that translated into a show. And you have more freedom now to do weird stuff. I mean, like, there's tons of weird stuff on streaming now. And so it finally felt like it was time to do that. But really early on, UCP asked me, like, what do you want? What is your goal with this? And I said, I really want to make good comics. And I want to stay ahead of you guys to make sure you have good material to draw from. But I don't have, like, the time in my life or the passion to go chase this as a TV show and really put, like, a tremendous amount of energy into it. Because I had done that with the film, and I used a lot of my creativity up. And it's kind of why I didn't write any Umbrella Academy comics for so long. So with this, I was like, you know, let's find the best people possible to make this show. And then I'll give notes and I'll have conversations with them. But I won't have final say on anything. And I'll be really just making my comics. So that's what I learned from the Hollywood process. Is just, you know, you got to be beyond patient, and you really just got to be working on your own stuff while all that stuff's happening in the background. And then maybe one day you get a call and you say, well, we're finally making it. It'd be really cool, and then you go back to writing a comic. You know?
I feel like Netflix has found a way to keep the creators more closely involved with it. I don't know if that's been your experience.
No, it has. The experience with Netflix has been really good. And basically, you know, I'm a co-executive producer, which is also what Ryall is. And our job consists of reviewing things, giving notes. Well, the whole process is really simple. I can work you through it really quick. The showrunner, Steve Blackman, he has me come in to speak to the writers when they start, because that's where everything kind of has to start, in the writer's room. So I'll sit down for an afternoon, they'll ask me questions. I also made this an 18-page document that explains everything about the Umbrella Academy and where the story's heading and how it really ends. You know, when we finally get to the 8th graphic novel, so they all have that. And that's it, I just come and hang out with them. And then I go back, I don't have anything to do with the writing. They write it all, and then we get scripts, and Gabrielle and I would give notes. And they could listen to those notes or not. And, but Steve has been really respectful and listens. He definitely hears us and listens to our notes. And they do make changes sometimes. Then basically, as co-executive producers, every step of the way we just make notes. And that's really it. We don't get the final say. And, but we're comfortable with that. That's the role that we decided to take, is to put our trust in somebody else and let them do their job.
think my favorite like development story for me, it was the first time I got anything in development was called M Theory, and it was a creator-owned comics about a guy and he has a talking kitten, and the kitten's got kind of a foul mouth. As we get through the process of it, they come to me and say, "Listen, we gotta tell you something, McKinney. It's gotta be a puppy. It can't be a kitten. It's gotta be a puppy. It's not gonna have a foul mouth." And I said, "That's fine with me, man. You can be a turtle." Like, I was just happy to be a part of the process, you know? So they're like, "You don't understand, man. You gotta sign off on this, and this is gonna be the thing. It's a dog. It's a dog." I was like, "It's a dog, man. It can be a dog. Let it be a dog. Let it be a puppy. I don't care. It's fine." We get through the whole thing. Maybe 2 months later, they come back and they're like, "Sit down. We got something for you. What do you think about a cat?" I went back to the cat. I was like, "Mine was the cat. I had the cat." You know? So, but I just like faked it. I was like, "Oh, that is good." Foul mouth, and they're like, "Oh, now you're talking." You know? That's fun. Yeah, man. So it was like, I was like, "This is wild." They just go on with it, not being precious about it, you know? Not holding on to too much wrong.
No, you can't.
Because you can fight for something so hard, and then when it comes down to it, they turned it back into a cat. Like,
Yeah, I don't fight anymore. I honestly, I just make my books because nobody can tell me. And you know, I still do fight for stuff. I know I sounded really defeated and said I don't fight, but I fight for the things that like really matter. But I don't lose sleep over them. Is the main thing. Like that's the big thing. I don't lose sleep, and if I hit a brick wall, I don't get a drill and try to drill through the brick wall. So I kind of know when to put my hands up. But I will still fight for stuff because you do have to some extent. I mean, it is an adaptation of your work, but like I said, like no adaptation is ever going to change your work or your book.
the source material.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, it's always the same.
Like, they'll call me, if I'm doing a full moon movie, I mean, they're not great movies, and you know, they're movies, they're fun, but they'll call me and be like, what is it this week, you know, what's the monster, what's going on? I'm like, two twin cookies? And they're like, oh, I'm liking it, give us more. I'm like, they're the gingerbread twins? No, yes, I'm like, their nipples are made of chocolate? And they're like, yes. I'm like, all right. Fine. I'm like, and then somebody makes those. That's an actual thing. Go look up the gingerbread twins. They're real. They made them. I was like, oh my God, they're crazy. One's a boy, one's a girl. I was like, oh my goodness, the privates seem a little too big. And they were like, and they literally sent me back one word. It was negative. Negative. You're not too big. But that's, and the gingerbread twins, you know? And I love it, man. It's like, that part is like the creative part, like where they're like, you're in it, you gotta figure out something quick, you know, you gotta put this stuff together. I enjoy it. It's like fun.
Great at it. Yeah, I would love to have to make a comic out of a super shitty toy line.
Basically, the Warriors comics.
That would be good.
Well, so when I was a kid, my favorite Marvel comic when I was little was this thing called Raw Space Knight, which was, right? Yeah. But one of the shittiest toys ever. Like, it was this giant square, sort of like toaster-shaped head, these little tiny arms, like this big barrel chest, no articulation. But I think it was notable for them because it was like the first toy that ever had LED lights, so the eyes lit up and the nipples lit up.
Yeah.
It was terrible, but the comic was better than a comic just designed to sell toys. And so that, even as a little kid, like you could kind of tell when the creators approached it with more purpose than just, you know, helping that company sell toys. And so the comic was like this creepy, weird thing with like these sort of body snatchers undertones, and it's like, that feels resonant to me because it's more than it should be. You know, and that's so right. Yeah, so it's like when the thing became better than the source material, always just, you know, had a good impact.
Yeah, it feels, it's like, as a kid to read, I read all your ROM stuff, and I loved it because I was like, oh man, he's making it good. It's amazing. Yeah, it's so fun because you're like, you know that stuff, and it wasn't a great toy line, but you still feel something for it. It's iconic looking.
And the writer really obviously cared, the artist really cared, right? Like, you know, the drawing's not easy. So, you know, they're like drawing the hell out of Rom. And a lot of work. Yeah, then when you see Rom, you're like, wow.
He writes ROM, 3 letters, and they have to draw ROM every single time he does it.
Well, I think that's why something like Westworld works better now because it wasn't a great movie. It was kind of a cool concept, but it wasn't a great movie. So it's like when they remake classic stuff, it's only gonna fail. But I think that's the key, is like something that starts out with kind of a fun idea, but there's a lot of room to improve upon what was done. Like that's always the most fun project for me, is like, I could do way better than what that was. But when it starts out great, it's hard to sort of live up to.
Yeah, that's the thing. That is so true. That's Charles Band, the full moon guy. He's like super cool about that with me, where he's like, I mean, here's a cool story about him where he was like, there's a movie called Castle Freak, and he made a poster that just said Castle Freak on it. And the director came in and was like, what's Castle Freak? And he was like, I have no idea. I like the name. And he's like, can I make that movie? And he was like, if you put a castle and a freak in it. And he was like, okay. And he gave him the money to make the movie, and it's a pretty good movie. You know what I'm saying? That's how Castle Freak got made. Like, it was just one there.
They did the comic of Castle Freak and then elevated it.
Oh, dude, I just wrote a Castle Freak comic. That's what I was, I was like, I was doing it, and I called the director to ask him stuff, and it was super cool because he was telling me the process. It was really awesome. And there was another one called Creepazoids that is still awesome to me. I don't know if you guys have seen Creepazoids, but at the end of it, there's this giant alien thing, and when its head cracks open, a baby comes out of it, and it's like, whatever. So I didn't understand that even now. So I called that I was like, so I called that director and said, hey man, why does the baby come out of his head? And he was like, there was some old puppet baby laying backstage. I was like, oh no! And I was like, well, was it supposed to be like in control of the Creepazoid, or was he going to be a Creepazoid? And he hung up. So in the comic book, I just said like, I was like, I had the guy who was killing the Creepazoid say, you know, why is the baby there? Is it the mother? Is there? And he was like, I don't care, I'm just gonna kill it. Put it in the comic book. That was my adaptation of this conversation. Man, maybe just is there. You know what he said? He said that wasn't his head. And I was like, what was it? Where did the baby come from? What was I looking at? It's so close up on the screen.
It's fun when you're kind of a fan of the stuff and you get to play around with it that way. I mean, even as I'm finding that with the G.I. Joe thing, where I'm like, you know, we knew that Duke and Falcon are half brothers, you know, but we don't really know anything else, you know. And so I'm like, so I wrote all this cheesy stuff about that's not even in the story, but just to get it in my own head and to the artist, and it's like, this is where they grew up. This is when her Duke's mom married this guy, and now blah blah blah. Now they live in Fayetteville and all this stuff. And again, it had this whole story behind it, and it was so fun for me because I felt like I was adding like this whole other piece to this existing world, you know.
That's so good.
And it's super fun.
I always try to keep an eye on that, like not to be overly fanish about a thing.
Yeah.
Is that how you recruit Doom Patrol? Is that like...
that made me think of Doom Patrol. I try to like nod to the past, but it's exactly like that. I'm trying not to. Well, it is fan fiction, and I realize it's fan fiction.
But it was fan fiction for Grant too. You know?
Yeah. So I try to, I guess, kind of have respect for my own writing in that way, where I don't try to be too fanish. I don't try to do too much fan service, and I just the way I look at Doom Patrol was like a bunch of little problems and how could I solve them. Like I would look into the continuity and stuff I was a fan of, and then I would be like, all right, that's gonna be really hard to work in, and then I would try to do that. And so I made it like a little game for myself.
I felt like your affection for that material came through, but it certainly didn't play like you were trying to hit those same notes. Like you pushed it in different ways. It was great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I totally was trying to take it to a different place, but just use some of the props.
Yeah.
That's what when I reread Grant Richards' run, which I did before starting making my notes for Doom, I was just looking at everything as a prop. And I was like, that could be cool in the background. Or let's use that character. Or, you know.
I met Richard today for the first time. I was all excited.
I got that. Yeah, we had breakfast this morning. It was super awesome.
Oh, man.
By the way, I know you took your helmet off, but that robot man.
Yeah, that robot man costume is
So cool. Yeah.
must go acknowledged. Wearing that thing.
I put it on Instagram.
Oh yeah, I saw. I just can't breathe in it after like 15 minutes, so I gotta take it off.